Good morning, Dana here. I want to talk a little bit about anger today. One of the things that we've been hearing from a number of us in the community is that we are stretched quite thin. And because of so many things that have been out of our control in the past little while, so many unknowns as we move forward, we're stretched a little bit thinner. Our anxiety is a little bit higher than maybe usual. We have this just this higher anxiety. And all of this makes sense, especially when you look at trauma and prolonged trauma research. This makes a lot of sense, that we are maybe tired and stretched thin. But one of the things that you've said to us is that in this stretched thinness, what happens is all it takes is a little scratch, and all of a sudden we're angry. Angry at things that we're not really sure about. We're not sure why we're angry or how it suddenly happened, or we regret being angry. And we've also seen a lot of anger in the world right now. And it's hard to know what to do with anger sometimes. And there's lots of theories around it. In Christian circles, we just say something like, don't let the sun go down on your anger. And then we dismiss it and kind of see it as sometimes a negative thing. At least that's been true in my experience. But there's a few things about anger that are really important. First is that anger is an emotion that is part of the human experience. It doesn't need to be something that controls us, which is really hard to not let it control us, but it doesn't have to be something that controls us. But it's something that needs to be expressed in kind and loving and healthy ways. We need to express anger in order to heal. Sometimes people say that when we tap down our anger, that it will either come out sideways later about something that's totally unrelated, or if as we bottle it up, sometimes we experience depression. Not always, but sometimes that can be true. And so we need to express anger. The second thing is that anger can be really good, especially if you've been oppressed and just kind of tapped down for your whole life. Anger can tell us that something is wrong and that there is a justice that needs to happen and that the situation needs to change so that we can move forward. Which is some of what we're seeing in the world right now. There's a prayer from Black liturgies. I don't know who they are, but it says this: emotional God, we fear that to allow for anger is to become less like you. But let us meet the God of the prophets. For you tell the truth. You hold fury at injustice. You in embodied anger flipped the temple tables. Would you help us to become faithful discerners of when to calm and when to rouse, rejecting that anger which leads to bitterness or hatred of one another, yet tapping into a righteous rage when that which you've created is under abuse and neglect. The dignity of creation demands our emotions. Make ours a beautiful rage. This can feel a little difficult because can our anger actually bring about healing? And the answer is yes, sometimes it can, especially when we are angry at injustice and work as a result of that anger, that passion, to make things well with the power of the Holy Spirit and with kindness. But it can also be something, so anger needs to be expressed. It can be good. It can also be very bad. We know that side of anger. A lot of us do, and we need to remember that side exists. And then the other thing is that anger is something that, there's many different theories about this, but can sometimes look like an iceberg. So this is the Gottman anger iceberg. And I found this really helpful. It's not the be-all and end-all. It's just a helpful understanding. So anger is the presenting emotion. It's the thing like an iceberg that's on top of the water, but there's a whole lot of things that exist underneath that maybe need to be explored. Anger can be a result of feeling embarrassed or scared or overwhelmed or having a lot of grief. Maybe you're stressed out and suddenly you get anger, or you're disgusted and you get angry, or you're anxious or envious or offended or insecure or hurt, or you regret something, or you're disappointed, or you feel disrespected, or you're annoyed, or there's trauma, right? And so as we experience this anger, it's really helpful for us to ask the question, what's happening here? Why is my body suddenly passionate? Why am I so angry? And maybe there is a very good reason that needs to be explored. And maybe it's something that you can tap down into and say, okay, I'm frustrated about this. Let's deal with this in a different way. Or maybe I have grief over the loss of blank. Grief over the loss of maybe not being able to meet together or whatever it is, right? And that needs to be explored. So I don't have all the answers. This is only one perspective of many on anger, but anger is something that needs to be explored, needs to be tapped into, needs to be understood so that we can move forward in healing. Don't let the sun go down on your anger is not just something to say, don't be angry, but explore it. Figure out where it's coming from, what action needs to be taken as a result of the things that you are feeling. And remember that no emotion is final and it does not need to dictate your behavior or your experiences. Feel it, express it in kind and loving ways, and then continue to move forward. Food for thought, grace and peace.